When you stop and think about some of the most iconic video game franchises of all time, what comes to mind? Maybe Mario or Sonic? How about Mortal Kombat or Call of Duty? Honestly, you could probably come up with hundreds of different answers. But for me, the best of the best will always be Halo. Halo was the first first-person shooter I've ever played, and I was instantly in love. With the simple yet engaging gameplay, beautiful music, and one-of-a-kind story, Halo became a massive part of my childhood. As I grew older and more Halo games were released, I began to hear a new demand from the fans. They wanted to see their favorite games brought to the big screen. And for decades, we the fans had to endure rumor after rumor about a new Halo project starting, and then watch it crumble. Sure, we got the Forward Unto Dawn movie, but I still don't really count that for obvious reasons. And then, everything changed.
Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
Nah, just kidding. Everything changed in 2021 when we began to hear rumors that a Halo show rather than a movie was in production. And despite the change from movie to show, fans were still ecstatic. A show allowed the writers more time to go deeper into the lore and expand upon these interesting characters. But, unfortunately for all of us, that is not what we got. The first season of Halo was released on Paramount Plus on March 24th, 2022, and it was met with near universal negativity and critique, and in my opinion, rightfully so. If you're like me, you're probably asking, Joe, if the source material is as amazing as you say, how can the Halo show have been so bad? And to that I'd say, I'm glad you asked. In today's episode of The Third Floor, we're going to be going over the 4 reasons why the first season of Halo failed. And then we're going to discuss how in the world it got renewed for a second season. So strap yourselves in, we're jumping to Slip Space. The first reason that Halo failed is the most obvious in my opinion. And that is that the writers thought they could create a better Halo than the people who created the dang story in the first place. Before the show began, I was excited to see which story from the Halo universe they would use. Maybe they would adapt the story from the first campaign, or perhaps they would use one of the plethora of books that have been written about the Halo universe. But no. They instead created some abomination where they took aspects from the Halo universe and twisted them into some weird, romantic space drama. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking. You're going to tell me that, hey, Joe, they had to create a brand new story because they didn't want to use one that everyone had already seen the ending to, ergo, the video games. And to that, I'd say this. Then why not use the books? There are very few people who have read a single Halo novel, let alone multiple. So no matter what, it'd be a fresh start for the majority of the audience. And then, for the people that have read the books, I'm sure they'd be plenty happy just to see their favorite novels adapted into a show. Instead, the writers gave us their rendition of Halo, which is unrecognizable. We have Spartans being portrayed as brainwashed robots who have little to no intelligence. We have Catherine Halsey acting like a supervillain who doesn't trust her Spartans. We have a human being being allowed into the Covenant. Master Chief being super horny for alien technology. Oh yeah, daddy! I mean, the list goes on. And the sad thing is, the lack of accuracy isn't the only problem. The story in itself is a poorly paced dumpster fire that hardly makes any sense. You know, if the story was at least entertaining, I think we the fans could overlook a few inconsistencies. But we couldn't even get that. The show should have been made to feel like humanity's stand against the overwhelming might of the Covenant. A somber yet hopeful tone to the whole show. But instead, we got a toneless story that was wildly small-scaled and hardly featured any aliens or warfare of any kind. The second reason Halo failed is the poor CGI. I mean, this should have been a no-brainer for all of us. Despite showing some early promise in the first episode, the CGI for the Covenant was abysmal. The only thing that was worse was the CGI they used in the Spartans' POV. I mean, those shots are terrible. It was third grade level work, and it really took me out of the story every time I saw it. You know, Paramount should have known the amount of time and money they would have to invest into this show's CGI to make it work. I mean, let's look at it. It's a story set in the future, in outer space, and it's about humans fighting giant aliens. I mean, there's hardly anything that can be done practically. But of course, they shortchanged that department, and it definitely shows. And please, don't even get me started on the fight scenes. If you played Halo, you know the amazing feeling of running around different worlds as the Master Chief. You know, that feeling that you're invincible, unstoppable. And that's what we wanted to see in this show. We wanted to see impressive fight scenes that showed the Chief in the same light that we view him. Yet all we saw were horribly animated aliens flailing around as the Master Chief sluggishly moved between choreography points and dispatched them. For a video game that was all about warfare, the show really seems to forget its importance. The last thing I want to say about this CGI is that it gets even more offensive when you look at the many live-action shorts that Halo has released over the years. I mean, look at We Are ODST, Remember Reach, and all of the Halo 3 live-action commercials. They are all beautiful and capture what Halo should look like. These should have been the inspiration for the show, or the groundwork they built from at the very least. I can't say enough good things about these shorts. They're amazing. If you haven't seen any of these videos and you like Halo, you gotta check them out. If any of you guys know these videos, please link them in the comments so your fellow viewers can experience them for the first time. I'll make sure to pin the best ones so others can check them out. Now, the third reason that Halo failed is one that may be a bit controversial, and I want it to be known that it's just my opinion, alright? But I found the acting in the show to be quite poor. Now, I do know that the actors were given absolutely nothing to work with, but I was still left underwhelmed by the majority of their performances. To be clear, I'm not one of those fans who wants hate spewed towards these actors. I really don't. They're all trying their best, and they're all humans like the rest of us. But I just felt like there's a certain gravitas to the whole Halo universe and its characters, and these actors just weren't able to meet that level. You know, that's all I'm going to say on this one, guys. Like I said, don't want any negativity being brought these guys' ways. Just wanted to share my opinion. The fourth and final reason that Halo failed is the one that probably made the fans the most upset. And it was the simple fact that the writers of the show clearly do not understand who the Master Chief is. This, of course, was made most apparent when they did the unthinkable and had the Master Chief remove his helmet in the very first episode. Now, listen, I understand why they did it. I really do. They were afraid that having a faceless protagonist would make the show boring for the viewers. But to be honest, I feel like that's completely ridiculous. The Master Chief has been and always will be an expressive character. We have typically been able to tell what he's feeling through his actions, his movements, and his tone of voice. He does have the ability to be an interesting lead character even without being able to see his face. Now, to be clear, I will say this. Yes, in the books, the Master Chief does remove his helmet, but only when surrounded by his fellow Spartans, and almost completely earlier in his life. As the Chief gets older, he has many battles that he fights, but the one that is rarely talked about is the one for his own humanity. The Master Chief, after a trauma-filled childhood and decades of violence and loss, is fighting to hang on to any piece of his humanity that he has left. And he's alone. All he has are the battles before him and the rest that he takes until the next one. And because of that, his armor is symbolic of this battle. He lies wrapped in this futuristic piece of machinery 24/7, and he slowly begins to see himself as the armor he wears rather than the man that lies beneath. By removing his helmet in the show, you lose that symbolism and that deeper layer of his character. The Master Chief is willing to sacrifice everything he is and everything he had hoped to become in order to save as much of humanity as he can. You know, he's driven by that desire, and he fights for it always. In the books, he becomes trapped in his armor, maybe even a part of it in some ways. By taking off his helmet, we release him from that trap, and once again, we lose what could have been a truly unique part of his story. Once you move past his helmet, there's still a lot of things that go wrong for the Chief. First, they stick in with his sidekick, Quan. You know, it's really apparent that she's meant to be his baby Yoda, you know, the small, vulnerable companion that brings more emotion out of his stoic character. But as I said earlier, the Chief doesn't need this crutch, and Quan becomes a completely unnecessary element of the show, and to be honest, I feel like she takes away from the show, as a matter of fact. On top of that, they have the Master Chief acting like a robot slave, whose mind was programmed to be obedient to a fault. You know, this is complete garbage. The Spartans are free thinkers. They of course follow orders like all good soldiers, but they can make decisions for themselves. More often than not, Spartans are dropped into horrible situations, or even behind enemy lines where contact is non-existent. So they have to be able to make decisions and be creative in how they achieve their objectives. By having the Chief seem so easily manipulated, you lose sight of how tactically masterful he is. You know, the Chief rarely loses, even in the books. But in the show, he is constantly distracted or overly emotional, and more often than not, these things cost him in the long run. The last thing that we all knew was coming was that they had the Master Chief get it on with some random human alien chick that he only has known for a few days. I mean, what in the world were these writers thinking? Master Chief? The stoic hero of humanity? The grim warrior who has been through so many battles? He suddenly decides to throw caution to the wind and sleep with a rando just because she gets off on artifacts as much as him?
Don't worry. I know what the aliens like.
This weird story and the writer's odd obsession with taking the Chief's clothes off is how this character got the nickname Master Cheeks instead of the Master Chief. I mean, it is so far away from who the character is supposed to be, and it is truly unnecessary. This goes back to the writer's poor decision making and their egos. They really thought they were talented enough to do something so stupid and that we would just sit here and applaud them for it? I mean, come on. I'm not saying the Chief can never get down, but that's something we never, ever need to know about.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
This show turned the Master Chief into a lovesick puppy who would do whatever a random stranger told him to do just because he liked her. It's truly sad what they did to our boy.
That's my son! That's my boy! My boy!
So, these are my 4 biggest reasons why Halo Season 1 failed. All in all, I think the first season of Halo butchered the many characters and events that we fans have come to know and love. They made a show that could have been about anything, and then slapped a Halo filter on it, which is sad. The Halo universe has great stories to tell, if they're done correctly. Now, for the question of how in the world did this show get renewed for a second season, I think there are a few big reasons. The first is the fan base. Halo has a large number of fans across the globe, so even if they produce an absolute stinker of a show, they're confident we'll turn up at least for the first few episodes to see how it turns out. The second is the source material. I know I've said this a bunch, but Halo has a ton of interesting stories that can be explored. So there's a chance the studio will want to make a second season with a more accurate tone to it. The third reason is the most likely and the most annoying. The sad fact is that despite the poor quality of the first season, it was Paramount Plus's most streamed show for some time. And I also believe it did make them some money. So Paramount isn't going to let an easy cash grab slip away just because they're making garbage content. My closing thoughts are this. I truly hope the second season is an improvement on the first. I hope it is entertaining, I hope it is accurate, I hope it has the feel of Halo to it. But I truly have no confidence that that will happen. My gut tells me we're going to get more of the same. Hashtag long live Master Cheeks. Hey, fingers crossed I'm wrong though. Thank you guys so much for tuning into 4 reasons why Halo Season 1 failed. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks again so much guys. We'll catch you next time on the 3rd floor.